The gym at 6:15 a.m. smelled of rubber and disinfectant. Mark Donovan finished his last set on the chest press, silver hair damp against his neck.
Excuse me? Are you the captain?
The young woman turned and vanished between the weight racks before he could form a word.
The captain. What the hell was that about?
He pulled out his phone, typed the phrase into the search bar. A podcast cover filled the screen, a stylized anchor, the title bold and anonymous. 2 million monthly listeners, 187 episodes. The description read, "A wife's secret confession about her controlling, emotionally frozen husband." Mark glanced at his fitness watch. 7:18 a.m., the world outside hadn't changed, but everything inside had. He sat back on the machine, the gym noise fading to a distant hum. Strangers on treadmills had been listening to his life dissected.
She's been narrating me to millions for 4 years.
He gripped the phone tighter, his reflection a ghost in the black screen. He was the unwitting star of a story he never agreed to tell. He walked to the parking lot like a man underwater, the podcast app still glowing. He got into his sedan, jammed in the earbuds, and pressed play. The first track began, a woman's voice, calm, curated, describing a beach vacation where her husband refused to swim. The details were specific.
That was our trip to Edisto Beach. She even mentioned the sand dollars I ignored.
Then she used a phrase, emotional lockbox, that stopped his breath. It was a term from their counseling, something only Linda had ever thrown at him.
Only Linda called it that. It's her. It's been her the whole time.
He sat frozen as the episode unspooled, every memory twisted into evidence for an audience of millions. He drove home on instinct, the podcast still streaming through the car speakers, filling the sedan with the sound of his marriage being autopsied. In his home office, he pulled up the full episode list on the monitor, hundreds of titles, each a chapter of their life.
4 years. She's been recording this for 4 years, and I had no idea.
He sat in the blue light, a man unmoored, listening to the woman he loved dissect him for an invisible jury. He clicked to the podcast's analytics page. A graph showed downloads climbing past 2 million monthly. The numbers blurred, then sharpened.
2 million people think I'm the villain in her story.
He opened a notepad and began writing, episode by episode, falsehood by falsehood. She claimed he refused couples therapy, lies. He scrolled through listener comments. Thousands offered sympathy to his wife, calling him emotionally abusive, strangers diagnosing his character from a single narrative.
They don't know me. They only know the character she created.
He wrote a detailed account of a family dinner she'd described, placing himself at the center of an argument that never happened. He studied the show's growth over 4 years. The listener base had tripled in the last 18 months. Sponsors had come aboard.
She built a career by burning our marriage for fuel.
He slumped back in the chair, the coffee he'd poured at dawn still untouched beside the keyboard.
I have to listen to all of them, every single episode.
He clicked through to the show's website, and there it was, a Patreon link tucked beneath the episode list, golden and inviting. The page revealed member tiers: First Mate at $5 a month, Navigator at $20, Admiral at $50, over 4,000 patrons.
4,000 people paying to hear her version of our marriage. That's a salary.
He dug deeper, finding the podcast's media kit. An ad rate card listed sponsor slots at $1,200 per 30-second count. He opened a spreadsheet, typed in conservative estimates. Ad revenue alone topped $20,000. With the Patreon, the monthly total hit $34,000.
$34,000 a month? She's been hiding this for 4 years. That's over 1.6 million.
He sat back, staring at the screen, the numbers burning. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was a business.
Where did all that money go? Not into our joint account. Not into the house.
He checked the bank statements they shared. No large deposits. No studio fees. She'd been filtering the entire fortune somewhere secret.
She's planning something. This isn't just a podcast. It's an escape fund.
He scrolled to an episode called Fresh Start, recorded just last month. Linda's voice swam through the speakers, lighter than he'd heard in years.
I've signed a lease on a little place in Santa Fe. It's time for a new chapter. The captain doesn't even know I've been looking.
A lease in Santa Fe. She's moving out, moving on, without a word.
In the background of the track, a man's laugh curled around her words. Intimate, proprietary. Eric, the producer, chimed in with a private joke.
Eric, she talks about him more than she talks about me now. That laugh is part of her soundtrack.
He pulled up Eric's social media profile. A photo of Linda and Eric clinking wine glasses captioned, "Studio nights that matter most."
Studio nights. She's been building a life with him while I slept down the hall.
He cued episode 172. In it, Linda's voice cracked as she whispered a goodbye not meant for her audience alone.
I'm so grateful for the man who actually sees me. He's the reason I keep showing up to this booth.
She's not just leaving. She's already replaced me. She's been telling the world for months.
He listened through the night, headphones on, pen scratching across the legal pad. Every episode confirmed she had curated his worst moments.
187 episodes. She's been building this case against me for 4 years.
He paused at an episode where she described his cold silence after her mother's funeral. He remembered the exact moment differently.
She wants me to shout. That's the story she needs, the angry, controlling husband.
He closed the laptop. He wouldn't give her that satisfaction. Not a single raised voice. Instead, he opened a new browser tab and searched for how to start a podcast on the same network. He began reading terms, network exclusivity clauses. The knowledge felt like armor.
I'll speak when I'm ready, and they'll hear the truth.
He pulled out a fresh legal pad and wrote a single line at the top. Response. Late afternoon sun cut through the blinds. He hadn't moved in hours, but he had a direction. He scrolled to the network's contact page, Julia Torres, Senior Director of Content Partnerships. Her name felt like a door. He drafted an email, every word measured. I'm the captain. I'd like to discuss a new podcast, one that tells the other side of the story. He called a former colleague from his corporate days, a man who understood media deals. Jim, if I wanted someone to say yes to a risky proposal, what's the one thing they'd need?
They need to smell the size of the audience. Controversy sells, and I'm sitting on a powder keg.
He attached his outline, a clean 3-page document titled The Captain, a Response. Bullet points with dates, contradictions, and financial records. He clicked send and watched the screen as if it might reply instantly. The network's headquarters sat 3 states away, indifferent.
Either they see dollar signs, or they protect their star. Which will it be?
He imagined the glass and steel building of the network, the offices where decisions were made about who got to speak and who remained a character in someone else's story. He drove to a coffee shop to clear his head. He put in earbuds and studied the network's top shows, dissecting pacing, ad placements, listener engagement. As he drained his coffee, his phone lit up. A new email from Julia Torres. Subject, Re-podcast proposal meeting. His heart hammered. 2 days later, Mark walked through the glass doors of the network's headquarters. Julia Torres was already waiting, her blazer sharp, her expression unreadable. They settled into a bright meeting room overlooking the city. Mark placed his folder on the table, the same legal pad, now filled with evidence.
Your email stirred things up here. Linda's show is our biggest earner. Why would we give you a slot?
Because the audience she built wants the whole story. I'm the other side, and I come with receipts.
He opened the folder, spreading out the Patreon figures, the ad rates, the Santa Fe lease details. Julia's eyes narrowed.
34,000 a month? She never disclosed that to us. This changes the calculus.
I want the slot opposite hers. I'll call it The Captain. Same name, same network. Let the listeners decide who they believe.
Julia studied him for a long moment. Then she pulled a contract from her briefcase and slid it across the table.
2 weeks to launch. I'll give you the studio, the producer, the slot. Don't make me regret this.
Mark signed. For the first time in days, the weight shifted. He wasn't a character in her story anymore. He was the author of his own. At home, he spread the legal pad beside the laptop. Every false statement Linda had made was now an outline for his rebuttal.
Start with the numbers. They don't lie. Then the Santa Fe lease. Then the producer.
He typed through the night, each sentence a brick in the wall between her public fiction and the facts he had gathered. The next morning, he arrived at the network studio, script in hand, the microphone waiting like a silent witness.
My name is Mark Donovan. You know me as the captain. This is my first time speaking.
He detailed the Patreon tiers, the ad rates, the $34,000 a month that never touched their joint account.
She signed a lease in Santa Fe. She told the world before she told me.
He held a bank statement to the microphone, the paper rustling on the air, evidence made audible.
I am not the man she invented. I am the captain, and I am done being a character.
He pressed stop. The red recording light faded. The first episode of The Captain was complete. He uploaded the episode at 10 a.m. Tuesday. For an hour, nothing. The dashboard sat at 0 downloads, his finger hovering over refresh. Then the first retweets appeared. A woman posted, "Wait, I think the real captain just spoke." The comment thread exploded.
They're listening, the ones who wondered what else was true.
By noon, downloads ticked upward, not a flood but a steady stream. He watched the blue line on the analytics graph climb. His show now sat opposite hers on the network app, 2 identical titles, 2 opposite truths. Listeners began comparing episodes. Comments shifted from shock to support. "He's got receipts," someone wrote. Another, "I just unsubscribed from Linda's show. This feels different."
They're turning. But Linda will respond. I need to be ready.
He ate dinner in his office chair, the phone face up beside the plate. Linda was still at her studio, oblivious. By midnight, the first episode had 2,000 downloads. The comments section was a battleground, but the tide was rising.
She spent 4 years building her story. I gave the truth one day. Let's see which one sinks.
Linda checked her phone after a morning recording session. A listener had tagged her in a thread with one word: The Captain.
What? Another show called The Captain? Who would dare?
She pressed play. Her husband's voice, calm and measured, filled her ears. Her hand went to her mouth.
He has the numbers. The lease. How did he get all this?
She called Mark 3 times in a row, each time it went to voicemail. Her thumb jabbed the screen again.
Not yet. She needs to feel the silence.
Linda tried Eric next, straight to voicemail. On social media, listeners were already switching allegiances. She sat in her studio, the microphone off. For the first time in 4 years, she had no words.
This is just the beginning. She hasn't seen the second episode yet.
Linda realized the secret she'd built her career on was now her undoing, and he wasn't going to stop. On day 3, the analytics chart crossed. His blue line climbed past her red one, settling at the top of the podcast rankings. A digital news outlet ran an article titled "The Podcast War That's Captivating Millions." His show was listed first, hers second.
They're calling it a war. She wanted a narrative, now she has one.
Linda refreshed her podcast page. The 5-star rating had dropped to 3. Patrons began canceling by the dozen.
They're unsubscribing. They believe him over me.
She stormed into the living room, confronting him in front of his laptop screen. The silence he'd maintained was now a fortress.
How could you do this to me? We're supposed to be a team.
We haven't been a team since you started sharing our bedroom arguments for ad revenue.
They stood frozen, the chasm between them now broadcast to millions. He turned back to his laptop, ready to record again.
I'm not the villain in this story. Not anymore.
The first sponsor withdrawal email arrived on Thursday morning. By noon, 4 more had followed. Linda stared at the subject lines, unblinking. She grabbed her phone and called Eric, straight to voicemail. She tried again, then again, each time the same endless beep.
He's not coming back. He used me, and now he's gone.
She drove to the network studio, unlocked the door with a trembling hand, and sat before the microphone alone.
I want to thank everyone who listened. I hope you'll understand why this has to be my last time speaking.
Her voice cracked. Without Eric's production, the silence between her words felt like a canyon. The mixing board sat dark, untouched.
This is the sound of my career ending.
That night, she logged into her hosting platform and unpublished the show. Every episode vanished from the public feed. Linda sat in the dark, her phone screen reflecting a podcast app with 0 shows, 4 years erased in a single click.
It's over. He won.
She set the table like any ordinary evening, 2 plates, 2 glasses of wine. Neither touched the food.
Your show is doing well, I hear.
I'm just telling the truth. Something we stopped doing years ago.
She set her fork down, the clatter the only confession either would make.
He's not even going to apologize.
She's waiting for me to break. She doesn't know me at all.
They ate in silence, the hum of the refrigerator louder than any conversation they'd had in months. After dinner, Mark took his pillow to the guest room. Linda didn't ask where he was going. She stood in the empty kitchen, staring at the dirty plates, realizing the podcast had been the last thread connecting them. The clock on the wall ticked. The house felt hollowed out. Neither had shouted. The next morning, Mark walked into a lawyer's office on the other side of town. He carried a folder of printed screenshots and bank statements. He signed the divorce petition without hesitation. The pen scratched finality into the paper.
I'm not contesting anything. I just want out cleanly.
He took his podcast earnings, every dollar, and wrote a single check to a domestic mediation nonprofit. $45,000. At the nonprofit office, a staff member accepted the envelope, eyes widening at the amount. Mark just nodded and walked out.
That money bought me nothing. Let it help someone else talk.
Linda was served the divorce papers on a Tuesday afternoon. She stood on the porch, the envelope trembling in her hands.
He actually did it. He filed first.
The papers said irreconcilable differences. Mark had written in the margin, no further comment needed.
Now it's just paperwork. We've been over for years.
The mediator's office had a fake plant in the corner and a long wooden table. Mark and Linda sat opposite ends, a canyon between them.
I never meant for it to go this far. It started as a diary. I thought no one would listen.
But you saw the numbers. You monetized every argument. You can't call it a diary when it has sponsors.
He won't even fight. That's what hurts most.
The mediator slid a draft settlement across the table. Neither claimed the house. They split the proceeds like strangers.
Let her have Santa Fe. I just want the gym.
Mark signed first. Linda's hand shook as she added her name. The mediator stamped the agreement. The court date was set for 3 weeks later. A formal end to a marriage that had ended years ago.
3 weeks until I never have to explain myself in a courtroom.
Outside the mediator's office, they stood on opposite sides of the hallway. Neither said goodbye. The courtroom was nearly empty. A bailiff, a clerk, and the judge, who read from a folder without looking up. The judge granted the dissolution with a single sentence. 32 years of marriage ended in less than a minute. Mark stepped forward and signed the decree. No hesitation, no pause. The pen moved like a man who'd already left. Linda stared at the page. Her hand trembled as she took the pen.
Just sign. It's just ink. It doesn't change anything that hasn't already been broken.
She added her name beside his. The clerk stamped the document, the sound echoing like a door shutting.
I thought I'd feel something more. All I feel is quiet.
They walked out into the long hallway. Mark didn't look back, but Linda slowed, as if waiting for a word.
Say something. Shout at me. Anything would be better than this silence.
The clock on the courthouse tower read 10:05. They were no longer husband and wife. Linda's voice cut through the marble quiet of the hallway, thin and frayed at the edges. She couldn't let him vanish without a reckoning.
Mark, I need to know. Why didn't you ever shout? In 32 years, not once did you raise your voice.
Mark stopped a few feet from the exit, the morning light pouring through the glass doors and framing him in gold. He turned.
I don't shout. That was the whole problem you couldn't describe.
The words landed without volume, and yet they echoed louder than anything she'd ever recorded. Linda's face went pale. He didn't wait for a response. He pushed through the doors and the sun swallowed him whole. Linda stood alone in the corridor, the silence pressing in like a verdict.
He never shouted. He just left. Just like that.
She listened to her own breathing and for the first time heard what she'd been missing all along. Outside, Mark Donovan got into his car, the engine the only sound. No podcast, just silence, and the quiet of a man who had finally closed the door. Linda stood motionless in the courthouse hallway, the echo of his voice still shaking her ribs. A line from her own podcast surfaced unbidden. He keeps everything in an emotional lockbox. She finally understood what she couldn't describe.
All this time, I wanted him to shout. And he couldn't. That was the point.
She turned from the empty corridor and walked out alone, the heavy door thudding shut behind her. Hours later, she stood in the living room, taping up a box labeled Santa Fe. The house felt like a museum of their failure. The recording studio door swung shut one last time. No sign, no goodbye, just the click of a lock. She sat on the sofa, tissues scattered, the weight of the truth finally settling onto her shoulders.
He didn't need to shout. He just needed me to hear the silence.
She sank deep into the sofa, staring at the wall, and for the first time in 4 years, she didn't reach for a microphone. Not shouting was the loudest thing Mark Donovan ever did, and now, finally, she'd heard every note. He sat in the car for a long minute, engine idling, sunlight warming his hands. He pulled out his phone, an email from the nonprofit, thanking him for his donation.
$45,000, a small price for peace.
He drove past the nonprofit's building, its sign catching the sun. He didn't stop. At home, he made a fresh pot of coffee. The kitchen was quiet, but it no longer felt empty.
I didn't shout. I didn't need to.
He carried his coffee to the back porch and sat, watching the sky shift from gold to blue. The gym could wait. Today, the only thing scheduled was nothing at all.
She said I was frozen. I was just waiting for the right moment to move.
He took a long sip. The bitterness of the coffee was exactly what he wanted. A month later, Mark sat in his studio, the microphone glowing. His voice was calm, unhurried.
Mediation isn't about winning. It's about finding a way to stop shouting long enough to hear each other.
He no longer spoke about Linda. The podcast had shifted to stories of reconciliation, of couples who found the words they'd lost. At a local coffee shop, a young couple approached his table. The woman touched his sleeve.
You're the captain, aren't you? We listened to your episode on listening. It saved us. I'm glad it helped. That's why I do it now.
He walked into the gym the next morning, the familiar smell of rubber and chlorine no longer carrying dread. He set his bag down, nodded to the same attendant who'd been there months ago. He began his warm-up, the routine a meditation. No whispers, no hidden podcasts, just the rhythm of his own movement. The captain had become something different. Not a role, not a victim, just a quiet voice helping others find the words. Evening found him on the back porch, a mug of coffee cooling in his hands. The sky shifted through orange and purple, a quiet spectacle he once ignored.
She called me frozen. I wasn't frozen. I was saving my words for the right listener.
He thought of the donation, the couples he'd helped. Shouting would have been easier. Silence was harder. He'd built a new rhythm. Gym at dawn, coffee at dusk, the microphone when someone needed to hear that listening wasn't weak. The neighborhood was quiet, the way he liked it now.
I am the captain. But the story was never about me.
The sun dipped below the roofline. He didn't move. Some stories end with a shout. This ended with a man and his coffee, watching the dark come in. And the quiet spoke louder than any podcast ever could.